let's move on to the multicolor. Alright, first one's a Planeswalker, a Johnny Sleeper Agent. It's 1 and a green and a white, and a green or white, or what is it? Complicated. So you could pay either green or white for that 4th mana cost, or you could pay 2 life and it enters with what, 2 fewer loyalty counters. So if you pay 4 mana, then it enters with 4 loyalty. If you pay 3 mana and 2 life, it enters with 2 loyalty. And the first loyalty ability is +1, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature or planeswalker card, put it into your hand, otherwise put it on the bottom of you may put it on the bottom of your library. Pretty straightforward. Second ability is -3 loyalty. Distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among up to 3 target creatures. They gain vigilance until end of turn. Okay, it's not bad. The ultimate ability is -6. You get an emblem with whenever you cast a creature or planeswalker spell, target opponent gets 2 poison counters. Alright, for limited, this is... it's a planeswalker. The +1 ability is good. I think -3 ability is fine. I don't think you're ever going to want to use the ultimate ability in limited, because there's no other way to poison counters on your opponent that I've seen in this set. So this planeswalker is kind of a sore thumb in this set for limited. But yeah, the first 2 abilities make it worthwhile. Especially the first one. The first one's good. I think it's, in limited, it's just a B. I think it's a B. You're always going to want to play this. You may... it's probably always going to be a first pick. There may be some other cards that would be a better pack one, pick one. Like a rare or uncommon might be better, I think. I think I've rated a rare or uncommon higher than a B. But anyways, it's a good planeswalker. It's fine. It's a B. Joda the Unifier is next. It's 1 of each color casting cost. It's a legendary creature, human wizard. It's a 5/5. Legendary creatures you control get +X/+X, where X is the number of legendary creatures you control. So this gets +1/+1 if it's the only legendary creature on the board. So it enters the battlefield as a 6/6. Six for 5. And it has another ability. Whenever you cast a legendary spell from your hand, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a legendary non-land card with lesser mana value. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. That's an amazing ability. What happens though? If it's late in the game, you play this, you have no legendary creatures left in your library. So exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a legendary non-land card with lesser mana value. What if that never happens? Do you then just put all the cards you exiled on the bottom of your library in a random order, i.e. you just shuffle? Or do you lose the game? I'm not sure. I assume you just put them, you just shuffle your deck and that's it. Let's go with that. So for domain, this is the bomb, a bomb. Not even for domain. This doesn't really have anything to do with domain. The only relevance is the 5 color mana cost. But in reality, assuming the only legendary cards you have in your deck are creature cards, this enters the battlefield as a 7/7 if you have nothing on the battlefield. Wait. No, his second ability doesn't trigger when you play this card. So it enters as a 6/6. The next time you play a legendary spell, it becomes a 7. It becomes a 8/8. It gets +2/+2 because the legendary spell creature you played gives it a +1/+1, and then you get to cast the next legendary in your library for free, and it adds another +1/+1 to both this guy and the first legendary you played is now getting +3/+3. So if this guy survives a turn and you have another legendary to play, it's huge. Everything gets +3/+3. And the game is over, basically. So this is a bomb. Could end up being like Miriam the Dragon. No, not even Miriam the Dragon. That was easier to cast. This is going to be fairly difficult to cast, I think. You have to be a domain archetype. That being said, if you can cast it, it's an A. If you're going to struggle to cast it, it's probably a B. I think most of the time it's going to be a B, but if you end up in a solid 5-color archetype, this is an A, and this is the reason you go with 5 colors, because you open this in pack 1. Yeah, it's a good card. Rith Liberated Primeval. It's 2 colorless, red, green, white, for a 5/5 legendary dragon with flying and ward 2. So 5 mana, 5/5, flying, ward 2. Other dragons you control have ward 2. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature or planeswalker an opponent controlled was dealt excess damage this turn, create a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. It might be hard to trigger that second ability because your opponent is going to see it coming. They're going to think real hard whether or not to chump block and give you a free 4/4. But if that's their only option, then you just won the game. So, this is a finisher. It's quite good. Looks like it's going to be fairly easy to cast. I don't know how many other dragons are in the set, but that's a nice ability giving them ward 2. I think this is probably a A-. Definitely a pack 1, pick 1. Shauna, Purifying Blade. Green, white, blue for a 3/3 legendary human warrior at Mythic with lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay X. If you do, draw X cards. X can't be greater than the amount of life you gained this turn. Okay. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay X. Let's say you gained 1 life. You can pay 1. Draw 1 card. If you gained 10, you may pay X. X can't be greater than it. So if you gain 10, you can pay up to 10. Okay. So for a green-white lifelink deck or archetype, this is a bomb. This is the feature of your deck. And this allows you to draw as much as you are able to gain life. And that is huge. If you don't have a lot of lifelink, then you're gonna be needing to attack with this and hope it survives to the end step, so that you can draw something. And it doesn't have haste, so it doesn't attack the turn. Your opponent has time to prepare for its attack and kill it, ensuring that you don't get to draw cards. So, In life gain archetypes, this is an A. A plus even. Maybe an A, just an A. Let's go with an A for life gain archetypes. And otherwise, it's just a B. If it's going to be hard to gain life, then it's... No, if it's going to be hard to gain life, this is just a C, actually. Maybe C+. Yeah, C+. C+ or A. Build around A. Torsten, founder of Benalia, 5 green white for 7/7 legendary human soldier. Mythic. Why does that mythic symbol look different than this mythic symbol? What's up with that? This one has like a white dot in the middle. Is there anything else different about it? That's kind of weird. Why is that? Huh. Gonna have to read the comments about that. For 7 mana, you get a 7/7, and when it enters the battlefield, reveal the top 7 cards of your library. Put any number of creature and or land cards from among them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. When it dies, create 7 1/1 soldier creature tokens. That's fantastic. 7 mana, 7/7. It's a fatty that refills your hand with revealed cards. So what? You're gonna have an empty hand by the time you cast this anyways. So that is excellent. And when it dies, it gives you a whole bunch of chump blockers. Or, you know, the width to finish the game. So this is a A-. Maybe even an A. Just because it refills your hand, it's fantastic. Yep, I think this is an A. It's expensive, but it's a great card. Soul of Windgrace. 1 black, red, green. For a legendary cat avatar creature, it's 5/4. Whenever Soul of Windgrace enters the battlefield or attacks, you may put a land card from a graveyard onto the battlefield tapped under your control. And it has 3 abilities. Green, discard a land card. You gain 3 life. 1 and a red, discard a land card. Draw a card. 2 and a black, discard a land card. Soul of Windgrace gains indestructible until end of turn. And these are all instant speed abilities. (5/4) for 4 mana. And it increases your domain. If, you know, your opponent has a land card in their graveyard. This is definitely a threat. To draw a card, the second ability is probably the most useful. Discard a land, draw a card. Okay, 5/4 for 4. I think this is a B+. I know it's got a lot of abilities here, but it is 3 color, and each of those abilities are a different color, so it does take some setup. Casting this on turn 4 seems unlikely. Or turn 3 even. B+ for Soul of Windgrace. Zur, Eternal Schemer is next. White, blue, black for a 1/4 legendary creature, human wizard with flying. 3 mana for 1/4. Enchantment creatures you control have Death Touch, Lifelink, and Hexproof. Death Touch, Lifelink, and Hexproof. It has the ability 1 and a white. Target non-aura enchantment you control becomes a creature in addition to its other types and has base power and base toughness, each equal to its mana value. Alright. So, how many non-aura enchantments are in this set? It seems like there's a fair number. how many enchantment creatures are in this set? 0. So the enchantment creatures it's giving these abilities to are the enchantments targeted by its ability, its activated ability. So for 3 mana plus 2 more mana, you get an enchantment creature if you've set your deck with the appropriate amount of non-aura enchantments and you have one on the battlefield already. There's a lot of setup involved with this. It's a decent flying wall defender. It's a tough one to rate. I think it's probably just a C+. I'm not sure how often you're going to be able to have a flying enchantment. Oh, it's not flying. The enchantments don't fly. They just have Death Touch, Lifelink, and Hexproof. They're not indestructible. It's probably just a 2/2 or 3/3 Death Touch, Lifelink, Hexproof enchantment creature. That'll trade off if you attack. We'll block with it. Yeah, C. I think this might just be a C. C+ if it says built around C+, otherwise it's a C. Maybe not even a C. Maybe it's a D+. Build around C+, otherwise D+. I don't know how relevant a 1/4 wall is going to be. 1/4 flying wall. Because that's what it's going to be most of the time. Just a 1/4 flying wall. I wanted to see what the comments were on this. No. All right, next up is Canard the Tainted. 2 blue, black, red for a 5/5 elemental demon legendary creature. And it has the ability at the beginning of your end step, choose one that hasn't been chosen. Draw a card, or each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Or this card deals 3 damage to up to 2. Deals 3 damage to up to 1 other target creature or planeswalker. Or exile Canard, then return it to the battlefield under an opponent's control. Alright. There's a lot going on in this card. 5 mana, 5/5 is good, I think, in this set. It's fatty. It is 3 colors to cost. It has 4 abilities, so you're going to use 3 of them for the turn it comes down and then the next 2 turns. And if he's still alive at that point, you have to use the final ability, which basically is you just hand it to your opponent. They have like a brand new Canard to use on their side. They get to use the 4 abilities once per turn. Doesn't hit the face at all, except for the second ability. Is this good? Can't tell. I think it might be it might just be a C+, B-. I don't know, that last ability is scary. Let's go with C+. Archetype Resurrected. 2 blue, black for 3/2 legendary human wizard Phyrexian creature with flash. 4 mana, 3/2 flash. When it enters the battlefield, choose up to 1 counter target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. Its controller draws a card. Okay. Destroy the other ability. The other option is destroy another target creature or planeswalker. Its controller draws a card. Alright, that's fairly interesting. That's pretty good, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's either a counter spell, counter ability spell, or destroy target creature, destroy their best creature at instant speed for 4 mana, and it leaves a body on the board. They do get to draw, but it's like a 50-50 chance they draw a land. So I think this is very good. I think that is definitely a worthwhile ability. Very flexible. You can take care of any spell on the stack, basically. Any ability on the stack. You can destroy anything. Target creature or planeswalker. I think it's fantastic. You could also destroy your own thing at instant speed. So it's like you're not going to counter your own spell. I don't think. Can't think of a situation that would be useful. But you could, at instant speed, after being surprised by a combat trick, flash this guy in, destroy that creature that you're about to lose anyway, and draw a card. Or you can flash in and destroy your opponent's creature before you lose yours, and they can draw a card. Really depends on how valuable the creature that is about to die on your side is. If it's a token, destroy your own creature, draw a card. That makes total sense to me. I mean, it's not that much more valuable than destroying your opponent's creature, but it really depends on your opponent's creature value also. So that's cool. I like it a lot. 3/2 for 4 mana is a little expensive, but the ability makes up for it. I think it's a B, or tie resurrected, maybe even B+. Quite good. Revaz of the Claw. 1 black, red, for a 3/3 legendary Vioshino Warlock with Menace. So 3 mana, 3/3 Menace has the ability tap, add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast dragon creature spells. That's kind of weird that it's only to cast dragons, and this is not a dragon. And it also has 2 more abilities. Once during each of your turns, you may cast a dragon creature spell from your graveyard. That's sweet. So you're casting a dragon creature spell from your graveyard for a 2 mana rebate off its cost. And it also the last ability is whenever you cast a dragon creature spell from your graveyard, it gains when this creature dies, exile it. That's fine. This is a great card. If you have a few dragons, you're gonna want this. This is very good. If you don't have any dragons, yeah, then its abilities do jack shit. And it's just a 3 mana, 3/3 Menace, which is still decent. So worst case scenario, I think this is a C. Best case scenario, you get some dragons in your draft. This is gonna be a B+. Yeah, it's that good. Alright. Maria, Scholar of Antiquity, 1 red, green. For a 3/3 elf artificer creature. Tap and untap non-token artifact you control. Non-token artifact. Add green. How early could you get non-token artifacts down to ramp? It has a second ability, tap 2 untapped non-token artifacts you control. Exile the top card of your library, you may play it this turn. So effectively draw a card, or lose it if you can't play it. And lose it if you can't play it. So it ramps if you have non-token artifacts to tap. And it draws a card if you have multiple non-token artifacts to tap. And if you have multiple non-token artifacts, you could also tap both of them and add 1 green for each. This seems pretty good. It's a 3/3 for 3 otherwise. If you have artifacts, you can create artifacts, non-token artifacts. Non-token artifacts. We haven't gotten to the artifacts yet, so we don't know how many of those that are playable you're going to have in your deck. I'm going to guess 2 might be average, maybe 1. So you're going to have to build around this. Otherwise, it's just a 3 mana 3/3, which is like a D plus C minus. But if you can build around it, it's better. I think it's probably a C plus B minus in that case. King Darien, oh god. Can I figure this out? L is 50. X would make it 40. 48. King Darien the 48th. Is that right? So yeah, King Darien the 48th. 1 green white for a 2/3 legendary human soldier creature. Other creatures you control get +1/+1, so there's no creature type restriction there. That's really, really good. It's already really, really good. This is already approaching A territory. It has the ability 3 green white. Put a +1/+1 counter on King Darien and create a 1/1 white soldier creature token, which is a 2/2 by default as long as King Darien is down. So that's 3/3 worth of value for 5 mana in the ability. That's pretty sweet. It's an expensive ability, but you know, you widen your board if this guy survives. Sacrifice King Darien is the last ability. Creature tokens you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So the tokens gain hexproof and indestructible. Alright, so this is a really, really good card. Sacrificing this dude would remove the +1/+1 buff it gives all your creatures. Why you would want to do that to save some measly tokens, I'm not sure. Maybe there's some fringe cases where that's important for like a finisher. I feel like this would go into Golgari, not a life gain archetype, and you would need to splash white because of the sacrifice thing. The only reason I would sacrifice this is the fringe case you need to get 1 damage through, and the only way to do that is to protect your tokens. Otherwise, that ability would be more useful if you could get this guy out of your graveyard easily and back into the battlefield. Which makes me think Golgari. But the first ability, other creatures you control get +1/+1, is relevant in any sort of archetype. That's a fantastic ability. I think this is a B+, maybe even an A-, just because of that first ability. It's pretty sweet. Yeah. B+. Ivy, Gleeful Spell Thief is next. Green and a blue for a 2/1 Flying Fairy Rogue creature. Whenever a player casts a spell that targets only a single creature other than Ivy, Gleeful Spell Thief, you may copy that spell. The copy targets Ivy. So whenever any player casts any spell that has a single target and targets anything other than Ivy, Gleeful Spell Thief, you may copy that spell, and the copy targets Ivy. So if your opponent plays a removal spell, you're not going to want to copy it to remove Ivy. If your opponent plays a combat trick on one of their creatures, you definitely want to copy that and target Ivy. This is a very interesting card. 2/1 for 2 flying, that's decent. I think this is a fantastic card. The ability prevents your opponent from playing combat tricks, unless they have combat tricks that target multiple creatures. Which is interesting. That's a reason to play those kind of combat tricks. What else? This also increases the value of your own combat tricks. It basically copies them onto Ivy. And it's not just instants and sorceries, it's also aura enchantments. As the parenthesis text, italicized text tells us, a copy of an aura spell becomes a token. So any spell that targets only a single creature other than Ivy, you may copy that spell. So there could be creatures that, whenever player casts a spell that targets. Alright, so it's not enter the battlefield, target creature spells. It's creatures that you cast, and on the stack you have to choose a target. You could copy that creature. I wonder how many creature cards are like that. How would the text... I'm thinking of how I would search for those cards with the text. I'd have to look at an example, but this sounds really good to me. This sounds like a B. I think it's about a B. Definitely going to prevent your opponent from playing combat tricks. And auras. Sweet. I like Ivy a lot. I think Simic looks pretty good in this set too. Okay, next up is Sten Paranoid Partisan. White-blue for a 2/2 legendary human wizard creature. As it enters the battlefield, choose a card type other than a creature or land. So, artifact, enchantment, instant sorcery, planeswalker. So choose one of those card types. Spells you cast of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast. You get a planeswalker in on turn 3 instead of turn 4. That's kind of cool. One has the ability 1 white-blue. Exile Sten. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Wow! That's awesome. Wait a second. Alright, why would you want to pay 3 mana to change the card type you chose to another card type? If you really needed to get that artifact down on turn 3, you chose that initially when you played this card. You got that down, but now you have 4 planeswalkers in hand. Ha, that's a joke. Now you have 4 enchantments in hand, or 4 instants in hand, and you're like, you know what? I regret choosing artifact initially. I'm gonna bounce this guy, or blink this guy, and change it to instant for 3 mana. So you could play those instants cheaper on a future turn. Alternatively, because that ability is instant speed, it makes Sten really hard to remove from the battlefield, because whenever he's targeted by your opponent, you could just blink it. This is really good. I think this is a B. Maybe even better. This might be a B+. I could even see it being much better and being in A territory when all is said and done. This is kind of like Lae'zel. It's going to be really hard to get rid of. Lae'zel was broken because you didn't have to pay anything to blink it. But this guy, you can blink multiple times. As many times as you have mana to blink it. So I give it a B for now. I think it's probably more like a B plus though. It's good. Next up, Ratadrinic of Urborg. 2 white, black for a 3/3 zombie wizard creature with vigilance and ward 2. So 4 mana 3/3, vigilance, ward 2. Other zombies you control have vigilance. And whenever another legendary creature you control dies, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary, and it's a 2/2 black zombie in addition to its other colors and types. So you sacrifice another legendary creature, it becomes a zombie with vigilance and ward 2, plus whatever it had before. Oh, but it's only a 2/2 now. Okay. I think this is really good. I don't know how many legendary creatures you're gonna get in a draft. Usually it's like 3 to 5 legendary creatures. Another legendary creature you control dies. So obviously you're gonna want those legendary creatures to return to the battlefield after making a 2/2 copy of them. It has vigilance and ward 2. Other zombies have vigilance. To build around. If you can't build around it, I think it's just a C, maybe C minus. But you're probably gonna have a legendary colleague on the battlefield with him, and if you can get that guy to die first, it creates copy, and then, you know, maybe you could get it out of the graveyard, cast it again, create multiple copies of it that way if you have sack outlets. Build around, there's a lot to you have to build around this quite a bit to make it worthwhile. I think it's just C plus. Build around C plus, otherwise C minus. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that one. Astor Bearer of Blades is next. 2 and red-white for a 4/4 human warrior creature. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may reveal an equipment or vehicle card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. It has 2 more abilities. Equipment you control have equip 1, and vehicles you control have crew 1. That's super powerful in standard. In limited, I don't think there's going to be many equipments or vehicles to choose from. I kind of doubt that's an archetype in this set. But you never, but maybe. We haven't gotten to artifacts yet, so that's where the vehicles and equipments live. So we'll have to see how many commons and uncommons of those there are. But 4 mana 4/4. I'll look at the top 7 cards of your library, assuming you've built around it with equipments and vehicles. Let's see. It's a build around. Great. So build around, I would say C plus, B minus, depending on the quality of your equipment vehicles. B minus, C plus, or it's just a 4 mana 4/4. So C minus. C minus, C plus. Next up is Nemata Primeval Guardian. 2 black green for a 3/4 tree folk creature with reach. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. When you do, create a green sapling token. It has the ability green, sacrifice a sapling. This card gets +2/+2 until end of turn. And it has a second activated ability. 1 and a black, sacrifice 2 saplings, draw a card. Alright, so assuming this guy sticks around long enough to create 2 saplings from your opponent's creatures dying, you get to draw a card for 2 mana. And destroy 2/2 worth of power toughness. Well, if you can build around it and have a lot of saplings entering, saplings surrounding it, that's a good deal. 5/6 swing for just 5 mana is okay. It's got reach, protects the skies. I think this is decent. I don't know how many saplings there's going to be in the set. I haven't seen. There might have been one other card that creates saplings that I saw earlier. C plus, 4 mana, 3/4 reach with upside. C plus, sounds good to me. Shwara, Ageless Innovator. Blue-red for a 2/3 human artificer creature with the ability tap. Put 2 ingenuity counters on Dwara. Then you may put an artifact card with mana value X or less from your hand onto the battlefield, where X is the number of ingenuity counters on Dwara. So this is another artifacts matter creature in blue-red. 2 mana, 2/3. Fine. Let's give it a C grade. Build around C plus. And that was blue-red. What was the other artifact? The other artifact, Astor, Bearer of Blades, artifact matters, was red-white. So maybe red-blue-white, or blue-red-white. Maybe blue-red-white is an archetype, an artifact archetype. Next up is Urg, Spawn of Turg. Let's say. Urg, Spawn of Turg is black, green for a star 5 frog beast creature, and whose power is equal to the number of land cards in your graveyard. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard. It has another ability. Black-green, sacrifice a land. You gain 2 life. I like this. I like how its abilities, stack to improve its power. So you play this, it's a 0/5 because there's no lands in your graveyard, but at the beginning of your next upkeep, maybe you get a land in your graveyard. Maybe you don't want a land in your graveyard. Maybe you want to play that land on the battlefield, and you're just fine leaving this guy as 0/5. And then later in the game, you start sacrificing lands, and this guy gets bigger, and you gain life. So it's a 0/5 for 3 mana with a lot of upside. I like this a lot. I feel like this could be a very important card for Golgari archetypes. Yeah, I'm kind of excited about this. I'm kind of a fan of black and green anyways, so I am a little bit biased towards this. But let's call it a 0/5 in a vacuum for 3. With upside and life gain. I think I'm gonna give this a B-. It's a freaking wall until later in the game. But it's only 3 mana. A lot of upside. I'm definitely going to be first picking this a lot. And building around it. This looks like a fun card to me. It's just my personal opinion. A lot of people don't like Golgari, obviously. But I do. And I'm going to be playing it. So B- for Urg. Next up, Raja Coalition Warlord. Didn't we see a Raja earlier? It's 2 red-green for a 3/3 elf warrior creature with domain. Whenever it becomes tapped, another target creature you control gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the domain. Whenever it becomes tapped, another target creature you control. Alright, so this is domain and enlist together. You use this guy to enlist. You enlist this guy to buff another creature. It gets tapped, and you target that creature with this ability. It gets another buff that improves its toughness. So this is essential for enlist archetypes, I think. If you find this pack on pick one, you're gonna try to build an enlist archetype. I think this guy's pretty good. I think it's 4 mana for a 3/3. Not great. You could attack with it and buff another creature for +2/+2 or +3/+3. That's pretty sweet. We can enlist him. I think this is good. In a vacuum, not build around. I think this is a C+, maybe. Yeah, I think it's C+. Pretty good. Maybe even B-. Build around, I think it's B+. I think it could be really good. What are other people saying? Yeah, good in this card. Okay. B-, B+. Aaron Benalia's Ruin is next. It's white, black for a 3/3 Phyrexian human creature with Menace. It's got the ability white, black. Tap. Sacrifice another creature. So white, black, tap, sacrifice another creature. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. That sounds pretty good. I like the ability, it's well costed. I think it's an all-around balanced good card. B- for Aaron Benalia's Ruin. Looking forward to playing that up. Katyova, Steward of Tides, green, blue for a 3/3 Merfolk Druid. Land creatures you control have flying. So, pigs, elephants, horses, those types. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about lands that have been turned into creatures somehow, with the Simic magic. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more lands, up to 1 target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with haste. It's still a land, so it creates land creatures. It's only 3 mana for a 3/3, and you need to wait till you have 7 or more lands. So whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, so when you play your 7th land, you could turn one of them into a 3/3 elemental creature with haste. And flying. Land creatures you control have flying. So yeah, you could play this on turn 3. It probably won't be around by the time you have 7 lands down. But maybe you could bring it back somehow and make it useful again. Or you could just wait to play this later in the game. You draw this later in the game, it's instantly useful. Assuming you have lands coming into play. It's pretty sweet. I like it. Early game, it's not that great. Late game, it's really good. I think it's probably a B-. I like it a lot. Creating 3/3 flying lands is no joke for only 3 mana. Katyova, B-. Nail. Avizoa Aeronaut, cousin of Lae'zel. 2 green-blue. I just made that up. I don't know if they're actually cousins. Maybe they are. 2 green-blue for a 2/4 elf scout creature with flying and domain. Whenever the domain says whenever this dude deals combat damage to a player, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of basic land types, the domain. Put up to 1 of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom in a random order. Then, if there are 5 basic land types among lands you control, draw a card. Alright, so it deals combat damage. You look at the top X cards, where X is the domain. You put 1 of them on top of the library, the rest on the bottom. Okay. And if you have a full domain, 5 domain, then you get to draw that card. So very domain specific. It's a 2/4 flyer for 4, which is pretty unappealing. I think. Maybe it's not. Maybe that's a good defensive wall in the air. This is the number of these. So, it's a decent ability, no matter what your domain. Hits for 2. You get to choose the best card out of the top 2 in your library and leave that one on top. So it's like a scry 2. It is a scry 2. And, except ones you put on the bottom are in a random order rather than you choosing the order. So slightly different than a scry 2. 2/4 flyer for 4. I think that ability makes it worthwhile even if you're not in a domain-specific archetype. I think that's a pretty decent ability. C+ at least. In a vacuum with only 2 domain. If you are in a domain archetype, this gets much better. I'd say max B. No, max B+, because you draw that card. It's pretty sweet. So, build around B plus for now. Otherwise C+. Baird, Argivian Recruiter. Who are these Argivians? Fear doesn't make you a coward. Giving in to it does. Now take up your sword and fight. The Argivians are quite aggressive, apparently. Alright, so this is a red-white 2/2. Mana cost is red-white for a 2/2 human soldier. That says at the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature with power greater than its base power, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. I don't think that would be that hard to do. It would take an enchantment aura, or a buff from another creature, or a counter. What is the base power of a star creature? Is it 0? And then if the star is a 1 now, is that bigger than the space power? I would assume so, but I'm not sure. Let's assume it does. I feel like there's a lot of ways that this would automatically give you a white soldier creature token at the beginning of every end step by the time you play it. I'd say like 80% of the time you can make that happen. So, that being said, I think this is a pretty good card. I think it's at least a C+, probably B- most of the time. Next up, Balmor, Battle Mage Captain, blue-red for a 1/3 bird wizard creature with flying. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain trample until end of turn. So instant or sorcery theme. 1/3 flyer for 2. It gives all creatures that +1/+0 buff and trample. That's pretty sweet. I think that's a C+. Done. Garna, Bloodfist of Keld. 1 black, red for a 4/3 human berserker creature. Whenever another creature you control dies, draw a card if it was attacking. Otherwise, Garna, Bloodfist of Keld deals 1 damage to each opponent. Whenever another creature you control dies, draw a card if it was attacking. Otherwise, deals 1 damage to each opponent. So, if you're attacking, you get to draw a card for each creature that died during that combat. 4 mana, 4/3. That's a great ability. This is a good card. B-, maybe even a B. Good stuff. Definitely want it in all my black-red decks. Next up, Ellis, Ilkor, Sadistic Pilgrim. It's kind of weird. Why is the ill italicized there? Ellis, Ilkor, not a core. Is that like the opposite of a core? Anyways, it's white-black for a 2/2 Phyrexian Core Cleric, so it says it's a core. What's the ill core? Is it like a banished core? Anyways, 2/2 Death Touch. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. Whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. It's a pretty good ability. All will bow to the Whispering One. Sheoldred. Alright, so this is one of Sheoldred's minions. I think this is a great card. 2/2 Death Touch. Depends. Gains life. Things your opponent if they want to start attacking and killing. I think this is a B-. I think it's a good card. Definitely useful. Bohart, Vodalian Desecrator is next. Blue and a black for a 1/2 Phyrexian Merfolk Wizard. Has 2 abilities. First one is tap, draw a card, then discard a card. If you discarded an instant or sorcery card this way, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. That's neat. Second ability is 2, and sacrifice this dude. You may cast target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard this turn. If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. Activate only as a sorcery. So you still have to pay that spell's casting cost. And you have to sacrifice this dude and pay 2 mana. But it's instant speed. And, oh no, it's not. Activate only as a sorcery. I don't know how often that's going to come into play. Obviously, you could cast any instant or sorcery in the graveyard, so one you played earlier in the game, or one you played this turn and you want to play next turn as well. You could do that late in the game as a finisher. So this guy's not bad. draw, discard is good. Turns through your library. It's 2 mana, 1/2, which is meh. But the abilities make it worth it. I think this is a C+ or B-. I think it's decent. Well, probably C+. Next up, Rona Sheoldred's Faithful, another Sheoldred minion. 1 blue, black, black for a 3/4 human wizard. It says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 1 life. So blue, black, white might be an archetype. You may cast Rona Sheoldred's Faithful from your graveyard by discarding 2 cards in addition to paying the 4 mana cost. Interesting. 4 mana, 3/4 with a little. Opponent loses 1 life with each instant or sorcery spell you cast. That's something. I feel like that's pretty expensive cast from the graveyard cost. But if you're just discarding a land and you got nothing else in your hand, why not? It's a 3/4 that comes back from the graveyard whenever you want it. Alright. C+. Done. Lagomos, Hand of Hatred. 1 black red for a 1/3 human shaman. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 2/1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next instant. So that hand is conjured at the beginning of combat on your turn, and it fades away after combat. It has trample and haste. It's a 2/1 trample haste. It also has the ability tap, search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Activate only if 5 or more creatures die this turn. Okay. So that would be a ridiculous ability if not for the 5 or more creatures dying. That's not going to happen that often. Maybe once. Maybe once if you're lucky. And you really have to work hard to make that happen, I think. Your opponent sees it coming. They're going to try to prevent it from happening, because just to tutor any old card from your library just by tapping this guy, that's super efficient. But the caveat of having 5 or more creatures die this turn, they don't have to be your creatures, so I guess you can't play a board wipe and then play this because it has summoning sickness and you need to tap it for that ability, so you can't do that. This has to be on the board when the creatures die. It's going to be pretty hard to set up for that ability, I think. I think that's a pretty rare event, pretty rare occurrence that you would be able to activate that ability. So otherwise it's a 3 mana 1/3 that creates a 2/1 every combat, every combat during your turn. You have sack outlets and you can sack that conjured hand during your second main phase for value, then this is great. But this, otherwise it's 3 mana for, let's say 3/4 worth of stats, which is just a C, I think. I think that's just a C in a vacuum, but if you can combo it with the sack outlet, it gets better than that. And if you build around, I'd say B- at the max. Lagomos, Hand of Hatred is a C or B- build around. Queen of Alanel of Rawdax. Green, white, white for a star elf noble creature. When, So this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures you control. So it's a 1/1, and you play it on its own. If one or more creature tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus another 1/1 soldier creature token are created instead. That's neat. Okay, token archetype. Go wide, baby. Green, white, tokens. That's what this is for. Otherwise, it's usually going to be a 2/2, 3/3, 4/4 if you're lucky. But if you're making tokens, this thing gets big quick. Yeah, this is pretty good. I mean, it doesn't have any other trample or first strike or lifelink or anything like that. So it's chump blocked when it gets too big. But it's also attacking with a shitload of tokens, potentially. However, if you're attacking with the tokens and this is chump blocked by like a 3-power creature, and then they also have enough creatures to block and destroy a few tokens that are attacking. At the end of combat, this dude's toughness goes down with the number of creatures that died, so that 3-power that blocked it could be lethal at the end of combat. Either way, I think this is a great card. I think it's good enough in a vacuum, not in a token archetype, that it's a C+. Build around, I'd say B+. I think it's really good. That extra soldier creature token created whenever you create another token could be huge. Relic Mons, Warren Chief. 1 red, green, green for a 3/3 goblin creature with Menace. Whenever it attacks, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield tapped. If you didn't put a card onto the battlefield this way, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. So whenever it attacks, you look at the top card, and you may put it onto the battlefield tapped if it's a land. You may, but you may choose not to, and if you didn't, you just leave it on the top of your library. You don't have to reveal that card to your opponent. And if you didn't put it onto the battlefield, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. So whenever it attacks, you're either putting a land down, tapped, or creating a token. So let's go white, green, red tokens. That's the archetype. And that sounds pretty fun to me. And these last two cards we looked at, these last two gold cards, are only uncommon, so I feel like this archetype has legs. Many, many legs. Many, many token creature legs. And it has Menace, so you can attack without too much fear of this dude dying. And if he does die, then you chose to trade it with a good creature. Good stuff. 4 mana, 3/3, creates a goblin creature token or ramps you. I think it's a B-. I think that's a good card. It's kind of like Battlecry Goblin. Yeah, I like it. Relic Mons, B-. So Queen is a C+ or B+ build around. You get Relic Mons, you've built around it. That's a B+. This is a B-. You're well on your way to a very nice draft. You just need some mana picks on it. Likely just splashing red. Green, white, tokens, going wide, splash red. Good stuff. Alright, Tura Kenrud Sky Knight is the next one. 2 white, blue, blue for a 3/3 human knight flying creature. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. 5 mana for a 3/3 flyer that creates tokens when you cast sorcery spells. So this is interesting. Not very good. I'd say it's a C. Done. But what's interesting is there's 4 colors here in the tokens archetype. So maybe the tokens archetype is more flexible than I realized. Is there a 5-color token archetype? Maybe. I'm curious to see what the fixing is like. Let me look at artifacts. Next up, Zara Ojanen, Scion of Athrava. 3 green white for a 4/4 cat warrior creature with domain. And the domain ability is whenever Zara Ojanen Scion, whenever this dude becomes tapped, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control with toughness less than the number of basic land types you control. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control with toughness less than the number of basic land types among lands you control. So at 2 domain, this is basically useless. You're never going to get that +1/+1 counter. 3 domain, you might get that +1/+1 counter on 1 or 2 creatures. 4 domain, this dude still doesn't get a counter. You need the full 5 domain to make this guy a 5/5 for 5. This seems like a pretty crappy card. It's like a build around C in a domain archetype. And otherwise, I would give it a D+, C-. Not great. Build around C is not great. Warlock Bone Rattle. 4 black green for a 4/4 troll shaman creature. So 6 mana 4/4 with domain. And the domain's text says when this dude enters the battlefield, if you cast it, choose target creature card in your graveyard. Return that card to the battlefield if its mana value is less than or equal to the number of basic land types, i.e. the domain, among lands you control. So if its mana value is less than or equal to the number of basic land, otherwise put it into your hand. Alright. So you get 2 of these. So you get 2 of these in your draft. You play 1, return a creature to your hand, regardless of what your domain is. That's pretty decent. It's like a Gravedigger, a 4/4 Gravedigger for 6. That's pretty good. But if the creature you're returning to your hand, if the mana value is 3 and you have a domain of 3, you put it directly on the battlefield. That makes this excellent, I think. And if you built a domain archetype and you have 5 domain, 6 mana to put 4/4 plus a 5 mana creature in your graveyard on the battlefield. Let's say it's at least another 4/4. That's 6 mana for 8/8 worth of stats. Plus whatever extra abilities are on that 5 mana value creature. Yeah, this is pretty sweet. Even if you didn't build a domain deck, even if you only have a domain of 2. 6 mana for a 4/4 Gravedigger that brings any creature, regardless of mana value, back to your hand, or a 2 mana value creature back to the battlefield, is really good. I think this is a B+. Quite good. Quite good. Warlock Bone Rattle, B+ in a vacuum. A in a domain archetype. Tori Davenant Fury Rider. It's 1 red, red, white for a 3/3 human knight creature with vigilance and trample. So 4 mana 3/3 vigilance trample. Whenever this dude attacks, all other attacking creatures you control. Whenever this dudette attacks, all other attacking creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Other red attacking creatures you control gain trample until end of turn. And untap each other white attacking creature you control, essentially giving them vigilance. So white gets vigilance, red gets trample, everyone gets +1/+1. It's only a 3/3. It's gonna die when it attacks unless you got a first strike combat trick or indestructible, whatever. I think it's good. 4 mana 3/3 with that ability makes it pretty good. So, you know, red-white is an aggro archetype again. That looks pretty sweet. I'd give it a C+. It's kind of like Liara. More expensive than Liara, but similar. I think it's a little better than Liara. Just a little bit. Yeah, C+. Najal, the Stormrunner. Maybe I'm probably biased because I'm not very good with red-white aggro decks. I've not had any success in that archetype in the last set. Even though it's supposedly one of the best archetypes. For some reason, I'm just not an aggro player. More mid-range or, you know, I don't know what else. Anyway, Najal, the Stormrunner, is next. 2 blue/red for 5/4 Efreet wizard creature. You may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. That's a sweet ability. I love that. So 5 mana 5/4 sorceries become flash. Sorceries become instants. I would love to see how we could exploit that in this set. It's only an uncommon, so this is definitely going to happen in draft. Alright, so 5 mana 5/4. It also has another ability. Whenever this dude attacks, you may pay 2. If you do, when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. Sold. I love this card. I'm going to be looking forward to drafting blue-red around this card. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. That's an awesome ability. 5/4 should survive until the next turn. When it attacks and you copy a ridiculous sorcery that's now an instant that just decimates your opponent somehow. Yeah, I love this card. I'm gonna give this a B+. It's a build around, kind of. All archetypes are gonna have instants or sorceries. This is in a domain, you're gonna be able to copy one of your instants or sorceries when this dude attacks, which is sweet. Love it. B+ for Najal, the Stormrunner. What are other people saying about this? Okay. Next up, Wrath, Weatherlight Stalwart. It's white-blue for a 1/3 human wizard creature. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may tap 2 untapped creatures you control. If you do, draw a card. Also has the ability 3 white-white. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain vigilance until end of turn. So it's kind of like the unicorn. Same 5 mana value ability cost. And you do that, give your creatures vigilance, you attack, you cast an instant and tap 2 of those attackers. It's no skin off your nose because if you would attack without vigilance, they would have been tapped anyway, so that combat trick just drew you a card for basically free. This is a good card. I think this is really good. The ability, just like the unicorn, the nerfed version of the unicorn. Celestial, no, not celestial. Steadfast unicorn. is still good, even though it's 5 mana instead of 4. 4 was too good. 4 mana value cost was too good. You could pump that 2 or 3 times late in the game and just overrun your opponent. But that draw part of the spell, I think that's awesome. You could do this at the end of your opponent's turn. Cast an instant at the end of their turn, tap 2 of your creatures, draw a card, then untap them for your turn. I like this a lot. I think this is a fantastic card. Definitely a B. Maybe even better. Wrath gets a B. Good on you, buddy. Alright, now artifacts.